Welcome to Bat and Switch. I'm Bat, and you're welcome to join me as I explore sex, kink, and power exchange from within the slash. This podcast contains graphic language and adult topics, so if you aren't an adult, please exit the cave now, and never accept internet advice, even mine, over the advice of medical or legal professionals. Nipples. Temperatures are falling again in Ohio, and we're all getting a bit nipply. As I rush from place to place, nipples on alert, I can't help but wonder why hard nipples are a source of embarrassment for some and a point of pride for others. When I was in high school, I can remember people using things like Band-Aids or store-bought nipple covers to hide their titty hard-ons. Some bras were made with panels inside to do just that. And fast forward, and we now have high-tech silicone numbers that make your nipples all but disappear. They're described as helping us be discreet. Because, God forbid we have something other than smooth Barbie breasts. Of course, other folks embrace their nipple erections, and in the absence of engorged nipples, they create the look with permanent high beams. For less than $10, you can get a pair of nipples with areola made of silicone. Just stick them on. There are even bras with built-in nipples. Helpful if you've had surgical removal of your nipples for any reason, or you just like the look. So let's chat about nipples, shall we? You can't really talk about nipples without acknowledging that they're situated on or hopefully around or near breasts. So what about boobs? Well, breasts are also called mammary glands. They're considered secondary sexual characteristics. That just means they're not components of genitals, but they do differ between the biological sexes. Men and women have naturally occurring nipples, and some men have a small amount of breast tissue as well. Still, breasts of significant size are generally a feature that's unique to the female anatomy. Breasts vary considerably among individuals, and in the same individual, left and right breasts can be quite structurally different. Nipples aren't identical either. Speaking of nipples, we can save the jugs for another day. Perched atop the mountainous region known as dem titties, or pecs, each nipple is situated at the tip of the breasts, in the center or near its own circular patch of darker skin, known as the areola. Small bumps on the skin of the areola are totally normal. They mark the openings to small glands called Montgomery glands. Secretions of those glands help keep the areola lubricated, and they also attract newborn infants to the nipple, kind of like the lights surrounding an airport, like ushering the pilot in. Here's your milk, right here, right here. So, at least in the female of the species, we generally accept that there's a function to the nipple and the surrounding tissue. Breastfeeding, pure, simple, yes. Well, not so fast. There are generally accepted proper nipple locations. In a 2016 article, investigators reported that men and women preferred a nipple areola placement centered vertically and slightly lateral to the midpoint horizontally. They surveyed 1,000 men and 1,000 women, ages 16 to 74, and it was in Sweden, which is fine. Who doesn't love Sweden? I should note they didn't ask about the placement of men's nipples, just women's. Still, it's a fun read if you're a nerd like me. And there are titty pics, so there's that. The study was kind enough to point out that nipple placement is largely influenced by media, which sells us unrealistic beauty standards. So we like the nipples somewhere near the center of the breasts. Good to know. Now what about the size and the shape and the color? Researchers have been kind enough to create charts for us so we can describe nipples with specificity. Nipples can be classified in 4 basic ways: as being flat, as protruding, as inverted, or unclassified. Since nipples vary left and right, it's possible to have up to 8 combinations. Who knew? Booby scientists knew. That's who. In terms of size, when 600 breasts were studied, the mean average of the diameter of the areola, bigger than a quarter, bigger than a $50, average 40 millimeters. You know what else has a diameter of about 40 millimeters? A toilet paper cardboard tube. Like we talked about in the penis podcast. The average nipple diameter is about ½ an inch, which is very similar to the diameter of a AA battery. The average nipple has a height of less than 1/3 of an inch, which is less than 1/5 of the height of a AA battery. If anybody catches you comparing your nipples to batteries, just tell them Bat told you to do it. That'll get you out of all kinds of sticky situations. Okay, so normal ranges for nipple and areola are based on measurements and scientific averages. But most expectations of women's nipples in particular and breasts are based on societal messages. Is that fair? Hell no. It's not fucking fair, but it is a fact. So averages are averages, and that's important to remember. My nipples are pretty close to the average size, but my areolas are enormous. I mean, like, wowza big. They just kept spreading. But in the lovely bell curve of life, we love averages. Regardless of how your nipples measure up, know that they can change in size and color across your life. Yeah. So one of the most common times for transformation is pregnancy. Along with nipple change, there's also a widening of the areola for most women in pregnancy. What about men and nipples? They have them, but do they function the same as women's nipples? First things first, hair. Men are more likely than women to have noticeable hair around the areola. Yes, many women have sparse hair there. Pull it if it bothers you. It's going to hurt, but just yank it out. Second, lactation. Lactation is largely the domain of the female of our species. Notice I said largely the domain because, yes, a man's nipples can lactate. If a nipple is experiencing inappropriate lactation, we call that galactorrhea, and all male nipple lactation is classified in that way. It's quite rare, and it's generally attributed to a major hormonal surge. In addition to the nipple shape and size variance between men and women, the nerves present in breast and nipples differ between the sexes. Scientists found differences in the nerve supply to nipples and areola. Nerves are spread out more widely in women than men, and that brings us to the fun stuff. Nipples as an erogenous zone. Oh, but wait. Since I don't want to end on a squiggy note, let's take a quick look at some of the unusual nipple situations, shall we? And then we'll get back to the hot stuff. Yeah, not every human is born with 2 nipples. You can have no nipples. You can have 1 nipple, 2 nipples, 3. If you're born without nipples, it's a very rare condition, you have athelia. To treat this, usually breast reconstruction is the go-to solution. Occasionally, women or men have extra nipples or even breasts. When those are present, you'll usually see them located somewhere between the armpit and the groin. They might even look just like a mole. They're called supernumerary nipples. Mark Wahlberg has one. But it doesn't stop there. One man was reported to have 7 nipples, and there's documentation of a woman who had a nipple on her foot, complete with fat tissue, hair follicles, glands, and all. So nipples, whether they're naturally occurring as a set or you have extra ones, may be removed as part of desired or required surgical procedures. Reconstructing nipples is possible, as is having a realistic areola and nipple tattooed on your body. They provide visually realistic results, and they cost far less. Which brings us to breast surgery and its effect on nipples in general, even when they're not removed. Nipples must often be relocated when breasts are reduced or enlarged. Nipple piercings are another procedure capable of changing nipple sensitivity, for good and bad. When researchers surveyed men and women about nipple piercings, 87% of the women and 94% of the men said they were happy with their decision. They'd do it again. They liked the way it felt and looked. Some reported enjoying self-gratification from the pain of the process or subsequent play with the piercings. And some people swear by nipple piercings for enhancement of sensation. Others find the piercing has reduced or eliminated sensations they previously had. So what about when good nips go bad, very bad? Like any other part of the body, they can be injured, infected, diseased. Breastfeeding can cause pain and chafing. More than 30% of women report this. While we often think of nipple sensitivity to be experienced by women who are having hormonal shifts, pregnancy, or lactation, pain and soreness can also affect others, including men. There's chafing and skin irritation that can result from something as simple as an allergy to soap, lotion, or clothing, detergent, softeners. There's also reactions to the friction caused by clothing that rubs against delicate tissues, a problem for those who jog or run. Chafing's uncomfortable, even painful, and so is a bleb. Yes, a bleb, a nipple bleb. This has to be my favorite word this week, bleb. I suspect it's not anywhere near as fun to have a bleb as to say bleb. But a nipple bleb is a blister on a nipple. They generally appear like any other small blister, but to be defined as a bleb, come on, say it, bleb. It has to be more than 5 millimeters in diameter. Other things might be classified as a bleb, like a milk blister or a Block Montgomery gland, but really those are different than a bleb. And nipples can get cancer. It's quite rare. Generally, there's symptoms, and you should definitely consult with a doctor if you have persistent pain, not consensually received from your favorite sadist kind of pain, or if you have blood or discharge. But not all discharges are cancer. Could be hypothyroidism or cysts, maybe a change in your meds. But if there's ever bloody discharge, have it looked at pronto. Don't take pictures of it and put it up on FetLife. Go to the damn doctor. But enough of that terrifying shit, because my tits hurt just thinking about it. Let's talk about nipples in terms of sexual gratification. Nipples are capable of erection in response to many things. Sexual arousal, tactile stimulation, even just cold. A titty hard-on is not evidence of desire or horniness. It can be, but it can be a lot of other things too. For women, tactile or oral stimulation of the breasts, and especially the nipples, in the appropriate circumstance, is sexually arousing. In contemporary Western culture, the appearance or feel of breasts and nipples are an important erotic stimulus to partners. Some women and men report being able to orgasm through nipple stimulation alone. More than 80% of women reported sexual arousal from nipple stimulation. 52% of men reported the same. But that's not 100% by a long shot. While only 7 to 8% of adults said it decreased their arousal to have someone mess with their nipples, it's always a good idea to ask before assuming. If you have a lover in that group, they're not going to enjoy your licking, sucking, nibbling, or tweaking. I've had 2 lovers in my lifetime, one male, one female body, who were hard nopes on receiving nipple play of any sort. It's sad if you like to explore nipples, but it's true. But no worries, they'll have their own hot buttons. Trust me, just ask. Some women report a strong nerve connection between nipple and cunt, so if your partner is wired that way, then enjoy that shit. For many, nipple torture of the garden variety tweak and twist to the use of clamps and suction devices is a wonderful part of sex or scenes. In addition to the sensations they provide for their owners, nipples can be a source of attraction for others. Researchers from the University of Nebraska found that men and women have similar gazes when looking at women. They quickly look at breasts and sexualized body parts before looking at other areas of the body. But that's in the West, and certainly not a worldwide phenomenon. In some non-Western cultures, men are said to pay very little attention to breasts beyond recognizing them as an indicator of reproductive maturity. In those cultures, you will generally find no cultural obligation to cover the breasts in public. There's a movement called Free the Nipple that campaigns for women's freedom to go topless in all countries. And in some American cities, like Columbus, Ohio, in fact, it is legal for women to be topless. It might not be the smartest move, especially in December, but it's legal. Look, your nipples are wonderful. There are folks who love a tiny nipple or areola. There are those who get fucking hot as hell over an elongated nipple. Don't be ashamed of them when they're on full alert or angry if they duck and cover. If someone tries to take your nipple joy away, you just nip that shit in the bud. Thank you for joining me today. If you liked what you heard, show me some of that love on social media. I'm batandswitch at Gmail, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, practically everywhere. You can find copies for most podcasts and links to information at batandswitch.com, along with contact information for me, Bat. Intro and outro music is Kevin MacLeod's Too Cool, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0.